tough question. Do you think there are a handful of officers out there that do let the authority go to their head and they take advantage of it?
Absolutely. I would go so far as to say, at some point, especially in a young career, that's going to happen to probably 40% or greater.
That many?
I believe so. Yeah, simply based on my experiences with the officers that I was privileged enough to work with over the years, and seeing things. Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure what you mean by take advantage of, but in my mind, I call it badge happy, where they pin that badge on and then they feel like they're the shit, and they don't take no for an answer, and they're delegating law, and in their own mind they've kind of got a little bit of a God complex. You're going to do this because I said so. That's that type of thing, and that puts law enforcement in a bad light, and that's another place where training would be a big plus.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, I think so. Yeah.
What kind of training do you think would help with that?
Well, nowhere in the academy training that I received or the continuing education hours that I went through, and there's a lot, at least 700 continuing education hours that I went through, nowhere in any of that did I ever hear the word humble. I think being humble is something that has to go with that badge. It has to. It gives it value. Yeah.
Interesting. Would you say, you said younger in the career, or early on in a young officer's career, do most people grow out of that?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I think there's going to be a few that probably never will, and it's just not the right place for them. And I believe they'll be weeded out. One thing I've definitely learned about law enforcement is when somebody gets in that doesn't belong, they're weeded out. Whether it's by their fellow officers, or administration, or citizens, they end up getting weeded out eventually. But yeah, it's the people in the first couple of years of their career, they don't have the experience yet to learn, what the compassion part is all about.
What are some of the worst things that you've seen? What are some of the worst scenes that you've rolled up on as a law enforcement officer?
Well, obviously not counting, the child in the pond. As a sergeant, I would show up on a scene, and the one in my mind right now it's a fatality accident. Pretty much any officer has to work a fatality accident at some point or another, or at least be a part of one, a part of an investigation on one. And I worked a fatality accident. I was the first one on the scene. It was right at the edge of my city limits when I was a sergeant. I was actually eating dinner at the time when the call came out, and I heard where the restaurant was located compared to where the crash occurred. I heard the crunch from the crash. So I was already up and leaving the table when I got the call. I was first on the scene for about 16 minutes by myself, waiting on other officers to get there, deputies, things like that. And it ended up being a 3-car accident, and what had happened was one vehicle in a Toyota 4Runner ran a stop sign out into a 65-mile-an-hour 4-lane intersection. Hit one vehicle, knocked it into another one, and when I got on scene, there was a young Hispanic male walking around, and seemed fine. I thought he was a witness. And so I grabbed him and stood him to the side, told him don't leave. I wanted to get a statement from him at some point when I was done dealing with the people. Went and dealt with the first vehicle. It was a 16-year-old that had passed away already. Ended up being somebody that was good friends with my kids. So,
Oh man.
kind of familiar with her. And then the other vehicle was a family. Mom and dad were both injured. Dad was unconscious. But anyways, I assessed everything, got back on with dispatch. Eventually got coverings put over the 16-year-old. Public doesn't need to see that. And Then went over to the Hispanic male. Once EMS, emergency medical services showed up, I went back over to the Hispanic male, started talking to him. Turned out he was the operator of the Toyota 4Runner that had caused the accident that actually blew the stop sign and hit these vehicles. And so immediately there was a deputy that showed up on scene. He was very adamant that this was in his jurisdiction, not mine. I said, okay, here he is. I've smelled alcohol on him. This is the driver and the cause of this accident. He's in your custody now. There was no field sobriety testing done by that deputy or anything else. And long story short, that individual ended up with a $75 fine for running a stop sign. That was it.
You got to be shitting me.
No. So that was a bad one. But
That's infuriating.
oh yeah, I agree. One of my officers, when I was a sergeant, damn good officer, really good man. He had a child pass away while he was giving him CPR. If I remember, it was an 8-year-old boy having a asthma attack, and the inhaler was with the parents. Couldn't be found. They weren't on scene. They were elsewhere. I'll leave it at that. But
What were they doing?
partying.
Partying?
Yeah, but that officer ended up getting sued by the parents for wrongful death. So I mean, it's the world that law enforcement has to deal with is pretty incredible when you dig in deep. And there's a huge amount of officers out there that just and I know anybody in a profession like this. Fire department, hell, even social working, like we spoke about, knows how to compartmentalize. They've learned it somehow, and they just do it. And so you just go through your career and try your best not to open those boxes.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. And you get real good at it.
Oh yeah.
Until it catches up with you.
Exactly.
But I guess kind of what I'm kind of trying to bring out of you here is law enforcement. You guys deal with the worst of people.
Oh yeah.
The worst of people, and you deal with the worst people on their worst days.
Yes.
And that, I'm assuming, is damn near a daily occurrence. Sometimes, probably 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 times a day.
Yeah. Well, I know in my career, I was never just randomly invited to a birthday party. So I mean, when I was a chief, my lieutenant at Fordham, he wonderful man, really good guy. He used to say, we have a front seat to the greatest show on earth. And that's obviously just a way to look at it, to make it seem much smaller than it is, and change it into something that's acceptable. It's there's a lot of good days, but even the good days are going to involve, a domestic violence situation, or a fatality accident, or a 2-year-old getting mauled by a pit bull. I mean, it's you're going to have good days in law enforcement. Don't get me wrong; it's a wonderful career, and I wish to God I was still in it. But every good day is a bad day too.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.